Hi, friends. Welcome back. I'm Emily.
And I'm Whitney.
And you're listening to Cousins Talk Crime. You're listening to a true crime podcast. Today's episode may include sensitive or triggering topics. These topics may include domestic abuse, child abuse, substance abuse, sexual assault, torture, murder, and suicide. So, Whitney, summer's getting started. Do you have any big plans this summer?
We are going to go to California to visit my sister. I'm excited to go out there with all the kids. They're so excited. I think we're going to go to Disneyland one day.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so they'll have fun.
You guys have been out to California?
Yes. And I've taken Kaiden to Disney World, but the others have never been to Disney.
Wow, fun.
Yeah.
That'll be a good time. I've not been to Disneyland before.
I've not been to the one out. I've been to the one in Florida, Disney World, but I've never been to Disneyland. But my parents are going. Daniel's parents are going.
Oh my gosh! So everyone's going.
I
didn't get invited. I'm just kidding.
You can come too.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That'll be fun.
That'll be fun.
That'll be a blast. That's cool that Daniel's parents are going out there.
Yeah, they're excited.
I bet.
What about you? Do you have any fun, exciting summer plans?
No.
Nothing?
No, not really. Not really.
Weekend getaways or anything?
No. We're going to be going to Churchill Downs to the horse races.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Father's Day weekend, I think. Other than that, I hate summer. I'm not a hot weather person. So I like stay in all summer. I hate it.
It is like the older I get, the more I do. I love the fall, but I do not like the heat.
Oh yeah, fall is when I shine. Yeah. I come out of my dungeon and I do everything. Like I love to go to the Cover Bridge Festival, all that stuff.
It could be fall all year for me.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. Me too. I do like a cold Christmas.
Yeah.
Like if it's warm outside on Christmas, I hate it. Like it's not even Christmas.
I feel like the last probably 5 years, I don't feel like we have as much snow as when I was a kid. Like for the kids, like we never have like a big where you know what I mean? Lately, I don't feel like we get any of those anymore.
No. White Christmases are very rare nowadays, and if you get one, just enjoy it because it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
I feel like our podcast will really shine in the fall too.
Yes.
I want to go do some fun little
adventures,
interactive stuff for the podcast. But yeah, so I will just go ahead and get into our next story. Our next story is about a young girl from Indianapolis. And from what I've read, this is the most tragic and horrific murder to ever be seen in Indiana. From everything I've read, this is the worst. A lot of you have probably heard of this. If you haven't, thank your lucky stars, but you're going to hear about it now. Because
I have not.
It is so bad. But I do want to give some trigger warnings before I start. This podcast will have a lot of graphic details, like things that you would never dream a person would do to another person. We're probably going to talk about it. There is child abuse, there's torture, there's sexual assault. If those things might bother you too much, or if you aren't into stuff with such graphic detail, I totally understand if this episode is not for you. But like I've said previously, sometimes things can be really hard to listen to, but just imagine what it took to endure it. You know, I feel like these girls or people that experience this type of torture, they deserve to have their story be told and people listen to it and have awareness. So, like I said, if you can handle it, I really encourage you to stick around and listen to her story because she deserves to have her story told. But I totally understand if you cannot. So we will jump right in. So this week's story is about Sylvia Likens from Indianapolis. Sylvia Marie Likens was born on January 3rd, 1949, to Lester and Elizabeth. Betty is what she went by. Now, her parents were carnival workers, and Sylvia was born between two sets of fraternal twins. I don't know what the chances are of that, but
Oh man.
her two siblings older than her were fraternal twins, and her two siblings younger than her were fraternal twins. So her older siblings were Daniel and Diana, and then her younger siblings were Benny and Jenny. Yeah. And Daniel and Diana were only 2 years older than Sylvia, and then Benny and Jenny were only 1 year younger. So they were all they had 5 kids, like bam, bam, ba bam, bam, ba bam. Like very close together within like 5 years. Now, Sylvia's younger sister, Jenny, suffered from polio, and it caused one of her legs to be weaker than the other, and she had a noticeable limp, and she had to wear like a steel brace. So she was like kind of disabled, but not like majorly disabled. Sylvia's parents typically traveled in the summer with the carnival, often selling candy, beer, pop, and other food items. And I guess the boys of the family were expected to work with them at the carnival to help, but they didn't want the girls doing that. So the girls would stay with grandma or friends or family while they were busy working. In her teenage years, Sylvia would do small jobs to earn money, like babysitting, cleaning for friends and neighbors, and just like little odd jobs. She was a good little worker. So Sylvia was gorgeous, but she smiles with her mouth closed in all her pictures, and it's because she lost a front tooth when she was roughhousing with one of her brothers, kind of like wrestling or whatever. She was very fond of music and had a love for the Beatles. She was very protective of her younger sister, Jenny, due to her slight disability. And Sylvia and Jenny did a lot of things together. Sylvia didn't want Jenny to like miss out on anything because of her disability. So she made sure that she did everything with her. Like if she needed to do things slower, Sylvia did them slower. And in 1965, Sylvia and Jenny were living with their parents in Indianapolis. Now, by 1965, Diana, the older sibling, she was married. So she wasn't living with the girls anymore. So it's just Sylvia and Jenny, and the boys are working and doing stuff. So on July 3rd of 1965, their mother was arrested for shoplifting. And shortly after this, their father, Lester, arranged for the two girls to board with Gertrude Baniszewski, one of the two. And Gertrude was the mother of 2 girls that went to school with Sylvia and had become acquainted with. Their names were Paula and Stephanie Baniszewski. So, mom got in trouble for shoplifting. I know mom and dad's relationship wasn't like rock solid. They were very hot and cold. They were breaking up, like stuff. Like it was never just super consistent. So they're busy with the carnival. They're busy getting arrested for shoplifting. They're just busy. They can't take care of these girls right now. So he says, I'm going to have you board with some friends. Usually they get boarded with grandma and grandpa, but I don't know if maybe the girls are teenagers now. They're thinking maybe instead of living with grandma and grandpa, let them go live with some friends.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll have a better time doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little background on Gertrude Baniszewski, the mother that they're going to be boarding with and being taken care of. So Gertrude was born on September 19th, 1928. She was born and raised in Indianapolis. Her parents' names were Hugh and Molly. And at the age of only 11, Gertrude witnessed her father die in front of her of a sudden heart attack. I guess this gave her a lot of trauma and PTSD because of that. And then later, she dropped out of high school at the age of 16 and married a man named Stefan Baniszewski, and they had 4 children together. I guess John had a temper and would occasionally beat Gertrude, and the couple were together 10 years before they got divorced. And after the divorce, she married a man named Edward Guthrie. And the marriage lasted only 3 months. I didn't see why the marriage only lasted 3 months. I'm assuming because she's crazy.
Yeah.
That's my assumption.
Yeah.
What I know about her, he probably saw something in her. But after this divorce, she actually got back together with her first husband, John.
The one she has the kids with.
Yeah. And they had 2 more kids together.
Oh, dang.
So what? That was how many? 6 kids? So they've got 6 kids now.
4, 5. So they had 1 more kid?
They had 4 kids.
Okay.
And then they had 2 more. So they've got 6 kids now.
I thought they had the 2 sets of twins and her in between.
Oh, no. That is...
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's Sylvia's family.
Yes. Okay. We're talking about the family she's staying with.
Yeah, this is the family she's staying with.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I totally get it. There's a lot of involved people, so we're going to have a lot of confusion, I'm sure. I'm going to do my best. But like I said, she got back together with her first husband. They had 2 more kids, and they divorced again after that. Now, after that divorce, I think Gertrude was probably about 35 at the time because they got divorced again in 1963. And shortly after that divorce, she began a relationship with a 20-year-old man named Dennis Wright. So a lot younger than her. I mean, 20 years old, that's practically still a kid.
Yeah.
They had a child together. And then Dennis ditched the 2 of them after the baby was born. Which he may have been a 20-year-old kid getting with a woman just to get with her, and then she she knows how babies are made. He's still a young kid. So he's like, I'm not ready to have a Dennis Jr. yet, but here he is. He's got a Dennis Jr. And he bolted. He was out.
He's gone.
By the time that Jenny and Sylvia went to live with Gertrude and her family, she was living alone with her 7 kids. Now her kids are Paula, and Paula was 17 years old. Stephanie was 15. John Jr. was 12. Marie was 11. Shirley was 10. James was 8. And Dennis Jr. was 1. So, I mean, she had a 12, 11, 10. She had kids back to back to back.
She had all kinds of kids.
She did have all kinds. 7 kids. Can't imagine having 7 kids. Now, Gertrude was a very small and frail woman. She was about 5'6", so she wasn't really short, but she was only like 100 pounds. So she was very, very thin.
Yeah.
And she was a very heavy smoker with clinical depression.
Oh, God.
And at the time of the boarding agreement, Gertrude assured Lester that she would care for his daughters like they were her own. And the first few weeks of the arrangement were fine. Like, there was nothing bad about the arrangement at first. There wasn't much discipline or anything like that. Sylvia even took it upon herself to help around the house, to do chores and just help. There's a lot of people living in that house. There's 9 people living in that house. Just 9 kids. There's 10 people living in that house at that time. They all attended Sunday school together. Just like me, it was a nice thing.
Yeah.
It was a nice thing. So like I said, this would have been early July. Mid-July. Let's say mid-July. I'm not sure exactly which day she went to go live with the Baniszewskis. Okay. But I'd say mid-July of 1965, she's living with the Baniszewskis. So the boarding agreement included $20 a week of payment to Gertrude for caring for the girls. And after only about 2 weeks, Lester failed to consistently send payment on their prearranged dates. Sometimes just being like a day or 2 late. Like, it's not like he wasn't paying her. It was just a day or 2 late. And it may not even been his fault. It may have been the post's fault, like the mail. Not getting the money ordered to her or however it was happening.
Was that making her upset?
Yeah, that was making Gertrude very upset.
Oh, Gertrude.
I feel like... I feel like she wanted any excuse
to be mad or upset.
To be upset. Now, Gertrude would take her frustration she had about this out on Sylvia and Jenny both. And the abuse began by beating their bare butts with various items like paddles or belts. Just whipping them for their dad sending a late payment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Not like calling the dad and getting upset with
Right.
him. Let's beat the kids.
Yeah.
That's going to teach dad.
Right.
Dad doesn't even know you're beating their kid, like his kids. How is that going to teach him to get, okay, whatever. She was quoted saying something like, well, I took care of you two little bitches for a week for nothing. You know, as she's beating them for this.
She said that?
Yeah. She was quoted saying that. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of people involved with this whole thing. So I do not know what information came from what person, but this is all the information we have. Yeah, this is all the information we have. And I don't know who got on the stand and said these things happened.
But yeah.
It's a combination of everybody, I'm sure. Now, in August of that year is when the abuse started getting like really extreme. And there was a time that Gertrude beat the two girls about 15 times on the back with a paddle. Not just on their butt, but like on their backs. And this beating was because Paula, one of Gertrude's daughters, accused the sisters of eating too much food at a church supper they had attended.
Oh, man.
They were being beat because they were being gluttonous.
Out in public, they ate too much.
They ate too much.
I'd be beat all the time.
Dude, same.
I love public events with open food. That's so sad.
And like Sylvia and her sister were like not big girls. Like it's not like I like I said, I think she wanted any excuse.
And I'm sorry, how old is Sylvia at the time of this?
You're right. I did not say that. Sylvia is 16 years old at this time. So Jenny would be about 15.
Okay.
So 16 years old is when this is happening. So she's old enough to know what's going on and to probably be able to stand her own ground against this weak little old word I will not say. I want to say it real bad, but I won't. The type of person that Sylvia is, she doesn't. She's very sweet and timid. So anyway, shortly after this, Gertrude started focusing her abuse almost exclusively on Sylvia. Kind of excluded Jenny from the abuse and just gave it all to Sylvia. And people say that it's because Gertrude was envious of Sylvia's beauty and her sweet like misdemeanor and just her work ethic. And just like that she was the person that people would want to be.
Right.
So she's doing it out of jealousy. You know, and she's got two daughters this age too. She's probably pissed that her daughters aren't as good and as sweet as Sylvia.
Right.
Sylvia would be starved and then forced to eat spoiled food out of a trash can if she wanted anything. I was wondering if the starvation started before they went to this church supper and that's why they were eating so much.
Yeah.
They probably weren't being fed.
Right.
Maybe that's why they were
mad
eating.
that she was just eating.
Yeah, just eating in general. And there was a time that Sylvia bought some candy with her own money. Gertrude decided to accuse her of stealing it. Has no evidence of her stealing it. She bought it with her own money. Just says, no, you stole that. And used that as an excuse to beat her.
She sounds crazy.
She is. On another occasion in late August, Sylvia was subjected to humiliation when she claimed to have a boyfriend whom she had met earlier in the year. Gertrude asked Sylvia if she had ever done anything with a boy, like sexually. And I don't think Sylvia picked up on what she was saying. She just said, like, have you done anything with that boy? And Sylvia's like, yeah. Like, we went to the movies and, you know, innocent things. So Gertrude used this as an excuse to be like, oh, she's having premarital sex. She's doing all this terrible stuff. And then several days later, Gertrude returned to the subject with Sylvia, telling her, you're certainly getting big in the stomach, Sylvia. Like acting like she was pregnant or something. And like saying that that's what happens when girls do bad things with boys and stuff. They get pregnant and whatnot. And I guess Sylvia's response was like, yeah, it sure is getting big. I'm just going to have to go on a diet, I guess. And Gertrude then told the girls that if they did something with a boy, like I said, they would become pregnant.
In this time span, do they ever get to talk to like their dad? Mm-hmm. They do?
They do. They don't say anything.
I get that though. I mean, phone calls are probably monitored with her standing right there too.
Mm-hmm.
She sounds like it's not like she just lets them freely.
No.
I'm sure she's right there by the line.
Anytime they see their dad or talk to their dad, she's there. And they're scared to say anything. But I guess also, after this time when she was talking about you'd get pregnant if you did something with a boy, I guess she kicked Sylvia, like, in the genital area. Like, kicked her there. Paula, who was also very jealous of Sylvia, participated in the attack. She knocked Sylvia off a chair and onto the floor, shouting, "You ain't fit to sit in a chair." Like, she's not even fit to sit in a chair. Now, you want to know what the big kicker of this whole, like, do things with a boy thing is and getting pregnant and whatnot? Paula is pregnant. At this time that this is happening and they're doing this and saying these things about her, Paula is pregnant.
Okay.
Like 3 months pregnant with a baby.
And does her mom know that?
I'm assuming she does.
Yeah.
But
Right.
why aren't you talking to Paula? She's the pregnant one.
Right.
Like,
Who's
why aren't
actually
doing things with boys? That's just that was the weird kicker to me. I'm like, did I read that right? Paula's pregnant? Yeah, Paula was pregnant. And they're over here beating her for doing things with boys.
Mm-hmm.
And
bizarre.
On another occasion, Gertrude, Paula, and a neighborhood boy named Randy Lepper force-fed Sylvia a hot dog, overloaded with ketchup and mustard and all kinds of stuff. Like, she threw it up because they were force-feeding it to her or whatnot. And then I guess they made her eat it.
After she threw it up?
Yeah.
This is like a whole nother boy. Like,
this is just a neighborhood boy.
Who?
No, this blows my mind. This case blows my absolute mind. Like, I feel like I've said this before. I said it with the Shanda Sharer case that I didn't realize it could get worse than Larry Eiler. And now I'm saying I didn't realize it could get worse than Shanda Sharer. And here we are. It is worse times 1,000.
Ugh.
Like, I've got 17 pages of this stuff. I'm only on page 4.
Oh, boy.
One time, out of retaliation to the abuse, Sylvia started a rumor. It's probably the worst thing she could have ever done. But out of retaliation of the abuse, she's still going to school during all of this.
Like, regular school.
Sylvia started a rumor that Stephanie and Paula were prostitutes. Because I guess they were starting the same rumor about her. And when Stephanie confronted Sylvia about the rumor that she started, Sylvia admitted to starting it. And Stephanie punched her in the face. And Sylvia apologized. I guess they both kind of had a moment. Like, Stephanie was upset that she hit her and punched her. And they both kind of cried about it. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But however, when Stephanie's boyfriend heard about it, he attacked her. Her boyfriend's name was Coy Hubbard, I believe. We talk about him in the story. I'm pretty sure that's her boyfriend.
Okay.
But apparently he slapped her, banged her head against the wall, and flipped her backwards onto the floor. When Gertrude found out about the rumor, she beat Sylvia with a paddle. Like, I don't get why everyone is so open to beating the shit out of her.
Right.
Everyone is so open to it. Like, oh yeah. One time, Paula beat Sylvia so hard on the face that she broke her own wrist. But she didn't let that stop her. She saw it more of as an opportunity. Because now she had a cast that could beat Sylvia harder.
And how old is Paula, the pregnant one?
Paula, I think, was... Let me go back. Paula's 17.
17.
And
so
Stephanie's
just a year
15.
Older. Okay.
Yes.
What a psychopath.
Gertrude's raising a bunch of psychos.
So she got a cast on after that.
Yep, she broke her wrist, got a cast, and used it to beat her harder.
Did, like, people at school not see any of this going on, or?
There were some people that admitted to knowing about the abuse and not saying anything.
Mm.
I guess Sylvia's case is the reason why people have a legal obligation to say things now. Like, that wasn't a thing now. Now people can be prosecuted if they don't say something and know about something.
Like you're a mandated reporter.
Yeah. Gertrude accused Sylvia on several occasions of being quote unquote promiscuous and told her how dirty and gross it was. She would also make Sylvia's sister Jenny beat her. She would make Jenny hurt Sylvia. And when Jenny refused to do it, then they would beat Jenny. So they would scare Jenny into participating.
Oh my gosh.
Now, Coy Hubbard, which I believe is Stephanie's boyfriend, and several of his classmates would visit the home frequently to physically and verbally torment Sylvia. Several of his classmates. How are we getting this many people on board? It blew my mind that we could get 4 people on board to kill Shanda Scherer. I mean, we got dozens of people on board here. Gertrude and her daughters would often join in on the fun of all these boys coming over. It just is like shit out of movies. I don't know. With Gertrude's encouragement, the neighborhood kids would routinely beat Sylvia, sometimes using her as a practice dummy in their violent judo sessions. They would lacerate her body, burning her skin with cigarettes in excess of 100 times, and they severely injured her genitals. They just loved kicking her in between the legs. They loved that part because she was a prostitute. Spoiler alert, she wasn't a prostitute. I'll just say that.
This is bizarre.
Okay. I'm going to give an extra trigger warning here. You may want to fast forward about a minute or so. I don't know how long I'll talk about this, but this one's really bad. It's gross. So, one time for entertainment, Gertrude and the teenagers forced Sylvia to strip naked in the living room and masturbate with a glass Pepsi bottle while they all watched. And Gertrude states that it was all to prove to Jenny what kind of girl Sylvia was. To prove to her, well, she's obviously a prostitute if she's going to do this.
What?
She's doing it because she's scared.
Yeah,
you're making her.
Yeah.
That one blew my mind. You're making a kid strip down and do that in front of other people.
Oh my God.
At one point, Sylvia needed new clothing, and Gertrude refused to purchase any. So she stole a gym suit from the school. Out of retaliation, Gertrude stopped allowing Sylvia to go to school. She needed clothes. She stole a gym suit from the school. And so now she's able to just pull her out of school.
So she stopped sending her to school.
Mm-hmm.
Does no one even notice that she's not there anymore?
I don't know. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened. For this theft instance, Gertrude beat Sylvia with a 3-inch wide police belt. Gertrude then completely switched while she was even mad at Sylvia and started yelling at her for the quote-unquote evils of premarital sex, and then repeatedly kicked Sylvia in the genitals. During this occasion of abuse, Stephanie did run to aid Sylvia and said she didn't do anything, and Gertrude then burned Sylvia's fingertips with matches before whipping her some more. So we're kind of at it again where Stephanie's kind of
over this whole...
She's over it. It's gotten too far.
Yeah.
And I just don't get how you can beat the shit out of Sylvia for the evils of premarital sex when your daughter is literally pregnant. Your 17 unmarried daughter is pregnant.
It doesn't make any sense.
No. A few days later, Gertrude beat Jenny with the same belt after she reportedly stole a single tennis shoe from the school to wear on her strong foot. That's so sad. She just wants a shoe to wear on her strong foot. Like, you're probably not
Right.
giving her any shoes.
Right.
And you're beating her.
Right.
You're forcing these kids to steal.
Yeah.
They're not thieves. They're not ill-intentioned, but you're forcing them
No.
to do that because of the neglect.
Yeah.
I just wish someone would have said something like before it got too bad, before she started pulling her out of school.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, how did her dad not know she wasn't going to school anymore? Couldn't she tell her dad, hey, she's not even letting me go to school?
Whitney, I don't know. I don't know how
Or
this
like when
happened.
Jenny goes to school, like when you're away from her, can you not mention it to somebody? Wouldn't you think?
You'd think. You would
If
think, but from what
if
I
your
know, these
sibling
kids are
was
that scared.
at home, I think once you got out, you would be like, I would.
From other things I read too, it was a time where kids weren't respected in the 60s like they are today.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nowadays, kids
Right.
run the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's whatever the kid says goes nowadays.
Yeah.
And back then, people didn't
Yeah.
care what kids said.
Right.
And like I said, I do know there are several people that testify and say that they knew that it was going on
Hmm.
and they didn't say anything. I don't think they trusted that people were going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have it noted here that they were afraid it was going to worsen the situation, like make it worse.
Hmm.
And another thing I read was that they don't think Sylvia realized that a person could get to where it got. Like every time it got worse, like she had to have been thinking, well, this is the worst it's going to, like it's never going to be worse than this. And then it gets worse. And
Yeah.
then it escalates so much to
Mm-hmm.
we have a dead child.
Yeah.
So their parents would visit them on occasion, but when they visited, the girls didn't show any visible signs of distress about their mistreatment, according to the parents. And it's most likely because Gertrude was always present when the parents came to visit. They didn't feel as if they could say something with Gertrude present.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think that parents would even believe them.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, the parents, after the fact, when she's gone, I'm sure they don't want to look terrible in the public eye. They're probably like, we did visits when we were there. Even if they weren't actually probably paying as much attention as they should have been paying as parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure afterwards they're like, we didn't see it. Well, I don't feel like you were probably looking that hard.
Well, and I don't think at that time either corporal punishment was
Mm-hmm.
like it was a thing.
Right.
We even had it in school.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing for you to.
But that girl had to look distressed.
You would think. Yeah, you would think.
She couldn't have been all perky, happy, the same kid she was before she went there after going through all that.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you're right. So, yeah, they probably ignored some signs. Now, the last time Sylvia's parents visited them was on October 5th, 1965. So they went mid-July, so we've gotten through July, August, September. We're into October now.
Oh, Lord bless.
And I guess there was a time they ran into their older sister, Diana, at a local park. I guess Diana, I didn't look super into this one, but I guess Diana, she was married and she did not have a relationship with her sisters. Like, the parents forbid her from talking to them. Like, they didn't have a good relationship, something like that. Well, anyway, they ran into Diana at a local park and they told Diana about the abuse. And I guess Diana chalked it up to them over-exaggerating. Like, they didn't have a good relationship. And she's just like, they're over-exaggerating. It's whatever. They just want to go back home.
Yeah.
They're just being teenagers.
Yeah.
So sister didn't say anything. But they did go to sister. I don't know if they
They
felt like
did.
this is the one person I can trust to take us seriously, and she didn't.
Yeah. That was probably disheartening.
And I guess several weeks before they told Diana in a park, they had ran into her at the same park a couple weeks prior.
Mm-hmm.
And they were with the 11-year-old daughter named Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Sylvia had said something to her sister about being hungry because they were not being fed
Yeah.
correctly. And I guess the sister had like a picnic basket or something. And she gave her a sandwich to eat.
Yeah.
And they ate it. And then when they got home, Marie told her mom about it. And they got in trouble once again for eating.
Yikes.
And then they gave, out of punishment, Gertrude and Paula choked and hit her very hard. I guess they hit her over the head.
For eating the sandwich.
And then they put her in a scalding hot bath in order to cleanse her of her sin. And then I guess Gertrude was like banging her head against the bath. I mean, it's just, it's terrible. And shortly after this incident, the father of a neighborhood boy named Michael Monroe phoned the high school to anonymously report that a girl with open sores across her entire body was living in the Baniszewski house. He's calling the school. He's telling them. This is a neighborhood like guy that has seen her. As Sylvia had not attended school for several days, a school nurse visited the house to investigate. And Gertrude claimed to the nurse that Likens had run away from her home the previous week and that she was unaware of her actual whereabouts.
And they didn't look into that any further?
Adding that Sylvia was, quote unquote, out of control. Her open sores were a result of Sylvia's refusal to maintain decent personal hygiene.
Oh, God.
Gertrude then further claimed that Sylvia was a bad influence on her kids and her sister. The school made no further investigations. So I guess that's why the school was okay with. She just ran away from home. Okay, we'll take your word for it.
Right.
Even though we're claiming that someone has open sores and it needs to be investigated.
And she's not at school.
We're gonna take the word that she ran away.
So she's not at home, she's not at school, she's missing.
Yeah.
But no one's looking for her.
She's run away.
Huh.
That's why I said kids weren't really respected at this time. Like, you know, a 16-year-old runs away. A 16-year-old in the 60s was practically a grown woman. Like, they could get married at that time, you know, have kids. The immediate neighbors of the Baniszewski family were a middle-aged couple named Raymond and Phyllis Vermillion. Both initially viewed Gertrude as an ideal caregiver for the Likens sisters, and both had visited the Baniszewski residence on 2 occasions while the girls had been under Gertrude's care. On both occasions, the Vermillions witnessed Paula physically abusing Sylvia. And Sylvia had a black eye. And they heard her openly boasting about her mistreatment of the child to them. Upon their second visit, the Baniszewski household both observed Likens to appear extremely meek and somewhat zombified in nature. Nevertheless, the Vermillions never reported Likens' evident mistreatment to the authorities. On 2 occasions, they noticed that she had a black eye. Gertrude was boasting about mistreating her to them. And they saw that she was zombified on another occasion, and they didn't say shit.
They didn't say anything.
They said nothing. Like I said, this is why a law was put in place for, like, there was a law put in place for this case itself, that if you see something like this, you have a legal obligation to say something, or you can get prosecuted. Like, these people should have been prosecuted for not saying anything.
Dang.
On or about October 1st, Diana Shoemaker discovered that her sisters were at the Baniszewski residence. So Diana is their sister, their older sister. She visited the property in an attempt to initiate regular contact. Gertrude, however, refused to allow Diana to enter the house. stating that she had permission from their parents not to allow either of the girls to see her. And then ordered Diana to leave the property. So now, like said previously, Sylvia started to become zombified because of the abuse. She gradually became incontinent, and she was denied access to a bathroom and was being forced to wet herself. Because of her newly incontinent nature, on October 6th, Gertrude threw Sylvia into the basement and tied her up. She was literally abused so much that she was unable to hold her pee. Like, she could not control herself. Like, she was abused that much. Here, she was mostly kept naked, rarely fed, and deprived of water. There were times when she would be tied to the railing of the basement stairs where her hands were like tied above her head and her feet were barely touching the floor. Like, how miserable would that be? Miserable. They treated Sylvia as if she was an exhibit to be put on display. She would charge the neighborhood kids 5 cents to see the display.
To see her down there tied up?
Yeah.
And none of them told anybody?
And they could come in for this 5 cents. They could come in and look at her. They could humiliate her, beat her, scald her, burn her, ultimately mutilate her. Just give me a nickel and you can go do whatever the heck you want to this girl downstairs. How did this happen? There are dozens of kids that participated in this.
I can't even believe that's real.
I know. How? Like, where's everybody's parents? How did no parents think it was? Or like the
humanity of the children.
Did no parents like think it was odd that every neighborhood kid was going over to this house all the time and coming out with big smiles on their face, you know?
That is bizarre.
Where were your kids in the 60s, folks? Come on. She was repeatedly gagged and placed into a bath filled with scalding hot water, and they would proceed to like rub salt in all of her wounds.
Oh my God.
They did this a lot. I still don't understand how every neighborhood kid could know about this and no one said anything.
That's bizarre behavior.
How did a person with morals not know about this?
Right. No, that doesn't make any sense.
And it blows my mind. This happened in Indianapolis.
Right.
Just probably down the road from your sisters.
Right.
Like, how does this happen? This happens in storybooks. This doesn't happen a couple hours away.
Right.
On one occasion, Gertrude and her 12-year-old son, John Jr., rubbed urine and poop from Gertrude's infant 1-year-old son into Sylvia's mouth before giving her a cup half filled with water. She was begging for water because she was so dehydrated. So they're like, okay, we'll give you water. But then they like put pee and shit in her mouth. On October 22nd, John Jr. tormented Sylvia by offering her a bowl of soup while she was actively starving to death, and then taking it from her and taunting her. Just like, here's your soup. Just kidding. That ain't your soup.
Oh my gosh.
He probably threw it down the drain. Gertrude eventually allowed Sylvia to go back upstairs and sleep, only if she learned to not wet herself. Yes, she's 2 years old, needs potty training again. No, she literally can't control it because of the abuse.
Yeah.
That night, Sylvia was able to whisper to Jenny to get her a glass of water. And the following morning, Gertrude discovered that Sylvia did in fact wet herself. And as a punishment, Sylvia was forced to insert an empty glass Coke bottle into herself again in front of the children. and then forced her to go to the basement.
Oh my gosh.
I don't get why this is a common punishment for her. Like, it's so odd. I've
That
never
is
heard
so
this.
bizarre.
I've never heard this before. So
It's
odd.
disgusting.
And I keep like telling myself, okay, the story can't get worse. But it just like gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it never stops. When I was researching this case, it literally just never. I'm like, am I ever going to get to the end?
Yeah.
Where this girl's poor suffering is done. One time, Gertrude ordered Sylvia into the kitchen and asked her about tattoos. Like, asked her if she had ever heard of a tattoo before.
Mm-hmm.
And then she told Sylvia that Sylvia had branded her daughters, I guess, like with that prostitute rumor. I don't know. She said that she branded her daughters and that she was going to do the same to her.
Oh.
So she heated up a needle to carve the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," in Sylvia's stomach. Literally carved with a needle.
What a psychopath.
And I guess she instructed a neighborhood kid, Richard Hobbs, that was present to finish the job. So from an interview I heard, she wrote the words on her stomach, like using a pen, and she told Richard to actually carve it, and he did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he did. He claims he used short and light etchings, stuff that wouldn't hurt so bad. But if you look, like, you can get on Google and you can see it. And it is.
Oh my God.
It wasn't short and it wasn't light.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Richard Hobbs and Gertrude's 10-year-old daughter, Shirley, led Sylvia into the basement and then proceeded to use an anchor bolt in attempt to burn the letter S on Sylvia's, like by her breasts. They were branding her. I think they say that they think they were meaning to put an S for like slut or something. But it looks like a 3. If you look at it, it's a 3.
Yeah.
Gertrude taunted Sylvia by telling her that she would never be able to marry due to the words that were carved on her stomach. And later that day, Sylvia was forced to display the carving to some neighborhood children. And while she was displaying the carving to the neighborhood children, Gertrude was telling them that she received this at a sex party by somebody. Like, Sylvia's this prostitute. She was at a sex party and someone did this to her. We didn't do it. Someone else did it to her at a sex party.
She is so crazy.
I can't believe a human like this exists.
No.
That night, Sylvia confided to her sister and said, "Jenny, I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to. I can tell." Like, she just knew this was going to end in her death. Like, nothing was going to stop this. They had done too much to her that they were going to get in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just...
Yeah, I mean, they can't erase what they've already done from the family.
No. And the next day, Gertrude forced Sylvia to write a letter to her parents. And the letter was going to say that Sylvia had ran away from Gertrude's, and this was Gertrude's attempt to frame a group of local boys for doing everything to Sylvia. So, because she knew she couldn't go back.
Yeah.
Like, the damage is done.
Yeah.
She can't just go back to school and live a life. We got to pretend that this was somebody else.
Yeah.
And Gertrude's intentions after the letter was to have her son John and Jenny, her sister, blindfold Sylvia and take her to a nearby wooded area known as Jimmy's Forest and leave her there to die. And after she finished writing the letter, Sylvia was then tied again to the stair railing and then was offered crackers. And Sylvia refused them, saying to give them to the dog. "I don't want it. Like, I don't want your stupid crackers. I'm just going to starve to death, okay?" Gertrude then forced the crackers into Sylvia's mouth, and then her and John beat Sylvia around the stomach. Is it ever going to end?
Right.
On October 25th, Sylvia attempted to escape the basement after overhearing the plan to take her to the forest and abandon her to die. She attempted to run out the front door, but due to her injuries and general weakness from the malnourishment, Gertrude caught her before she could escape the property. So she tried.
Mm-hmm.
Too little, too late. She tried too late. Sylvia was given crackers, but due to her severe dehydration, she couldn't even eat them. Gertrude then forced them into her mouth and struck her across the face with a curtain rod until sections of it were bent into a 90-degree angle. Coy Hubbard then took the curtain rod from Gertrude and struck Sylvia one more time, leaving her unconscious. Gertrude then drugged Sylvia into the basement. That night, Sylvia was desperate. She was trying to alert neighbors by screaming and banging on the basement walls with a shovel.
Oh boy.
She was trying. One of the nearby neighbors does confess to hearing the sound. And they were worried and they were considering calling the police. But the sound eventually stopped around 3 a.m., so she decided not to say anything. So how long did you listen to it? How long were you going to listen to it before you said something? Oh, I've listened to it for 5 minutes. Okay, and it stopped. Maybe. Okay, you listened to some crazy weird sound for 5 minutes and then it stopped. Okay, maybe. But if it's been going on for 3 hours, like how... Is it 2 days of hearing this nonstop noise before you're finally like, oh, I should call the police? Like, when do you finally, like...
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God.
It's crazy.
By the morning of October 26th, Sylvia could not speak. She honestly couldn't even hardly function. She had lost all motor skills, couldn't do, like, anything. Gertrude brought Sylvia upstairs and tried to feed her a donut and a glass of milk. And she got pissed and knocked Sylvia onto the floor of frustration when Sylvia was unable to move the glass of milk to her lips. And then she sent her back to the basement. Oh, Gertrude, you're such a wonderful woman. You're giving her a donut and some milk. Oh, wow.
She is bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Shortly after, Sylvia started becoming delirious, moaning and mumbling and stuff like that. She could only recite the first 4 letters of the alphabet when asked, and they were threatening her. I guess she had, like, pooped on herself, and Gertrude ordered Sylvia to clean it up. Like, she can't even say A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Right, she can't function.
And you're, like, expecting her to clean herself up. That afternoon, a group of her tormentors gathered in the basement, and Sylvia was clearly out of it. And they gave her a rotten pear to eat, and Sylvia couldn't even bite into it. Like, her teeth were falling apart.
Yeah.
Because of the malnourishment. And in an attempt to wash Sylvia, John Jr. sprayed her with a garden hose. She again attempted to escape, but was not strong enough. While on the ground, Gertrude stood over Sylvia with her foot on Sylvia's forehead, just staring at her for a few minutes. Like, she's this weak little thing on the floor, and Gertrude's just standing on her, staring at her.
Oh, gosh.
Later that day, Gertrude ordered her daughter, Stephanie, to clean Sylvia. And she was found by Richard Hobbs crying and cuddling Sylvia's emaciated and lacerated body down in the basement. So here's Stephanie again, feeling a little bit of remorse. You know, she's having to clean her up. Mm-hmm. She's not good. She's probably peed all over herself, crapped on her. You know, she's just not good.
She's on the verge of death.
Yes. And Sylvia knows that. I'm not Sylvia. Stephanie knows that. Mm-hmm. So that's why she's cuddling her and crying and stuff. And so Stephanie and Richard then decide to give Sylvia a warm, soapy bath, hoping that it will kind of wake her up and bring her back a little bit. And in the bathtub is when Sylvia took her final breath. She muttered her final words, saying, "Wish Dad was here and that Stephanie would take her home." And when Stephanie realized Sylvia was not breathing, she attempted mouth to mouth, while Gertrude was shouting out the children in the house, saying that Sylvia was faking her death. Like, Sylvia's literally taken her final breath, and your daughter Stephanie's trying to revive her. Gertrude's just screaming in the background saying that Sylvia's faking it. You honestly think after how many months are we here? July, August,
Right.
September, October. We're almost through October. We're like three
Yeah.
and a half months
Right.
of extreme torture. You think it's wild, like you think it's out of the question that she's dead.
Right.
It's got to be fake. Like you've seen her. Bah. Anyway, Sylvia was 16 years old when she finally succumbed to the abuse. Gertrude was beating Sylvia's corpse with a book, shouting, "Faker, faker," in order to get her to come to her senses. However, once she realized Sylvia was actually dead, she panicked and instructed Richard Hobbs, one of the neighborhood boys, to call the police from a nearby payphone. Okay? Why are we calling? Why?
For what? What's she gonna say?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what are you going to say? What, what are you going to tell the police? That she just randomly died? And they're
Yeah.
not going to see these, like, 100+ burn marks on her body? And anyway,
Does he call the police?
yes. When the police arrived around 6:30 p.m., Gertrude led the officers to Sylvia's body. They had taken her from the bath into a bedroom. She was clearly emaciated, bludgeoned, and mutilated, and was lying upon a soiled mattress in the bedroom. She then handed the letter that Sylvia had wrote to the police.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she was trying to execute the original plan. It was just differently. She was going to leave her
More
in the
lazy.
forest. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was going to she was going to leave her in the forest and they were going to find her that way, but it didn't
Now
work
the
out.
people that gang raped her brought her back to her house
Yeah, she escaped from them
and
and came back and
and then
they
he died. Yeah,
they
that makes sense.
so Gertrude claimed that she had been doctoring the child for around an hour before she passed.
Oh.
So she came home. She was mutilated. It was just awful. Those boys did terrible things to her. Anyway, and I was trying my best to save her life.
Oh, she was.
Yeah. And I guess part of this letter, like, pretty much states, like, I'm a whore and these boys offered me money if I had sex with them. And anyway, she said that she applied rubbing alcohol to the wounds in an attempt to give first aid. And she also added that Sylvia had earlier run away from her home with several teenage boys before returning to her house earlier that afternoon with no shirt and clutching the note. Oh, she was clutching the note.
I'm sure she wrote that up right after being attacked.
Yeah.
Please tell me the police for 1 second didn't buy this.
I guess Paula said, while clutching a Bible.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm sorry. Paula said, and this is like in the presence of the police, she said that Sylvia's death was, quote unquote, meant to happen. Then looked at Jenny and stated, "If you want to live with us, Jenny, we'll treat you like our own sister." I don't know if this was like a threat or what this was.
But I mean, like, Jenny's clearly seen all this. Like, people there, they know the truth.
And as they had rehearsed previously, Jenny told the police what Gertrude wanted her to tell them. However, Jenny whispered to the police and said, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything."
Thank God, Jenny. I mean, about time you did something.
I know, it's about time. She did. She said, "Get me out of here and I will tell you everything."
Well, yeah, because you're probably next. Because now she's going to need a new target, probably.
Yeah, now she's going to be bored because she doesn't have someone to beat. And how's she going to earn her money if she doesn't have the neighborhood kids giving her nickels?
Right.
So the police did take Jenny. They got her out of there. And within hours after a formal statement provided by Jenny, officers arrested Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, and John Jr. on suspicion of Sylvia's murder. And the same day, they arrested Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs for her murder. Those were two. Coy Hubbard, I'm pretty sure, is Stephanie's boyfriend.
Yeah.
And Richard Hobbs was just a random neighborhood boy that was
Yeah.
heavily
Yeah.
involved. They were all held without bail pending their trial. Now, initially, Gertrude denied any involvement in the
Right.
death. I had nothing to do with it. But by October 27th, she had confessed to having known the kids had physically and emotionally abused Sylvia. She stated Paula did most of the damage and Coy Hubbard did a lot of the beating. She's literally throwing her own children under the bus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Literally throwing her own children. And she did admit to making Sylvia sleep in the basement when she had wet the bed. And a police officer called her out on that bullshit and was like, the reason she's wetting the bed is because of the abuse she received. It had nothing to do with
Right.
her. Like, don't blame her for wetting the bed. And lacking any remorse, Paula signed a statement admitting to having repeatedly beaten Sylvia about the backside with her mother's police belt, once breaking her wrist on Sylvia's jaw and inflicting other acts of brutality, including pushing her down the stairs 2 or 3 times and inflicting a black eye. John Jr. admitted to having spanked Sylvia on one occasion, adding that most of the time I used my fists to abuse her. He admitting to having burned Sylvia with matches on several occasions, adding that his mother had repeatedly burned Sylvia with cigarettes. 5 other neighborhood kids who had participated in Sylvia's abuse, Michael Monroe, Randy Leopard, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke, and Anna Cisco, had also been arrested by October 29th. All were charged with causing injury to a person, and each was subsequently released into custody of their parents under subpoena to appear as a witness at the upcoming trial. Like, you're not going to get you're not going to get charged with anything, but you're going to be a witness. You're talking.
Thank God. People are actually having to talk.
Yeah. So, we'll get into Sylvia's autopsy. So she received a lot of abuse. So it's like, what did she actually die of? But Sylvia's autopsy revealed that she had suffered around 150 separate wounds across her entire body. She was extremely emaciated. Her injuries included burns, severe bruising, and extensive muscle and nerve damage. Her vagina was nearly swollen shut. In addition to all of that, all of Sylvia's fingernails were bent backwards. I know, that is the thing that kills me. I can't do that. Like, saying it makes me want to gag.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, that is like my one thing that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like, I could barely say it. Last night, when I was working on this and I was typing it, I was like,
yeah, that's,
it's bad. I hate that with the fingernails.
I don't even like getting a hangnail.
Oh. And most of the skin around Sylvia's face, breast, neck, and right knee had been peeled. So I don't know if people were literally skinning her or what. I don't know. You can get on Google and see a picture of Sylvia's body when it was found on the mattress, and it is so sad. So sad. Sylvia had nearly bitten through her lips. Like, her lips were barely hanging on by a thread. They were almost severed. And they assumed that this was all caused by, like, extreme pain, that she was, like, she was biting her lip when she was getting tortured.
Sense.
They were saying her lips were, like, nearly off. The official cause of death listed by the coroner, she was bludgeoned on the head.
So when the last hit of the curtain rod, probably, or something.
Yeah, she had she had a severe blow to her right temple is what ultimately killed her. And both shock due to the severe and prolonged damage inflicted to her skin and severe malnutrition were listed as contributionary factors to her death. And it's not like this matters, but I will state it. They were able to say in the autopsy that Sylvia was a virgin. So all this torture about her being a prostitute,
right?
Like, not like it matters that someone deserves to be beaten because they're a
But
prostitute.
Gertrude made
She
all this up in
she
her
just
head.
made it all up in her head.
Yeah.
She was a virgin. And so several arrests were made for Sylvia's murder, like I had said. But on December 30th, 1965, the Marion County Grand Jury indicted Gertrude, John Jr., Paula, Richard Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard. 3 weeks before the indictment, Stephanie had been released from custody on a habeas corpus bond. Her attorney was able to successfully argue that there was insufficient evidence to support any murder or culmination of fatal charges against her. Stephanie did agree to testify against her family and the others that were charged. So I don't think Stephanie was a big participant. Some of the instances I do see from Stephanie were emotional instances, so
Yeah.
I'm not upset with this. You know, she got off and she's going to tell as much as she can tell. And in a formal pre-trial hearing held on March 16th, 1966, several psychiatrists that had performed psychiatric evaluations on 3 of them, that they were all mentally competent to stand trial. Now, during the trial, Gertrude, Paula, John Jr., Richard Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard were tried together, and their trial began on April 18th, 1966. The prosecution was seeking the death penalty for all 5. Now, I'm not a death penalty person, but I can understand why you would want it for Gertrude. She's evil as they come.
Right.
But I don't think I can agree with the kids. Because, one, they're kids. I don't think we can do that to a child.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of these kids had this in them if it wasn't Gertrude encouraging them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think any of these kids would have done this to Sylvia if Gertrude wasn't encouraging them. Yeah. If Gertrude wasn't all excited.
She was like 17. I don't think that's a kid.
No, but you're still in high school.
Right.
I don't know. I think anybody that's still in high school is still a kid. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, if Gertrude wouldn't have been so into this abuse, none of these kids would have done this.
Right.
They were just feeding off of Gertrude. Like, oh yeah, this is fun. I'm all for it. I don't like her. So I didn't like that for the kids. All of the kids claim that they had been pressured into participating by Gertrude. Now, I do have a sound clip of Richard Hobbs. Since this is in the 1960s, there's not a ton of media coverage for this, but I do have this. I do not have something for every child, but I do have this. So I think this would be good to listen to.
1965 newscast in which Bob Hoover spoke with Richard Hobb, who explained what he did to the girl.
All I did was write out that thing on her stomach, and then I hit her about 10 or 15 times.
But how come?
Well, mostly because Gertie told me to.
Hoover then spoke to one of the Baniszewski children, who told him how the victim was treated.
She refused food. We tried to give her soup every once in a while and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take it.
Well, how about these scratch marks on her stomach? Who put them on her?
I did.
Why?
Well, Gertie just thought of it. She said, since you branded us, we're going to brand you. So she etched it in with a pen, and I went over it. She showed me how to do it, and then I went over it. I did it.
Did you ever use any hot irons on her?
No. Yeah, that 3 on her stomach, I did half of that. And Shirley Ann did the other half.
Where'd the S come from?
What do you mean?
There's a big S branded on her stomach, right below one of her breasts. Huh?
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what you're talking about. Now, how about the inscription on there, I'm a prostitute and proud of it? Who put that on her?
I did.
Did you scratch it on there, paint it on there? How'd you do it?
Well, like I said before, Gertie wrote it down there with a pen, and I did the rest. She showed me how to do it, and
Had Gertie abused this girl?
yeah.
Okay.
So who is that speaking?
This was Richard Hobbs. This is the boy that etched the thing into her stomach. And the way it started out, he was just like, well, I only hit her like 10 or 15 times. That's all I did. Like what he did wasn't bad. Like, that was what stuck out to me. Like, he's just so nonchalant.
Is he the boyfriend?
No, Coy Hubbard is the boyfriend.
So he's just like a random neighbor kid.
Just a random neighbor kid. As long as I
Did he get out in like 20 years? Is that what they said? Or no, I was just catching something else.
Yeah, you were catching something else.
So what did he get sentence-wise?
We'll get to that. Yeah. So Gertrude did end up pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. Honestly, no shit. I mean, you have to be insane to do what you
Right.
did. I don't think she should get I don't think she should get a lesser sentence because she's
No.
insane.
No.
I think if anybody deserves the death penalty, she does.
Yeah.
We all know you're insane, Gertrude.
Yeah.
Now, several people testified. Jenny Likens testified against all 5 defendants. Randy Lepper, one of the boys who had participated in some of it, testified. He testified that Sylvia had gotten so dehydrated that she was unable to produce tears when she would cry. And he also visibly smirked on the stand as he confessed to beating her anywhere between 10 to 40 times. Like 10 to 40 different times. Not hit her 40 times
Right.
in one. No, like beat her separately 10 to 40 different times. And he visibly smirked on the stand. Yeah. I'm proud of it. It was nice. A Baptist minister, Roy Julian, testified to having known a teenage girl was being abused in the house and failed to report it. Gertrude had told him that Sylvia had made advances to men for money, and I guess he thought she was getting an appropriate punishment for soliciting. A Baptist
Yeah.
minister. Okay. A 13-year-old, Judy Duke, got on the stand and testified to having witnessed Sylvia get salt rubbed into open sores on her legs until she screamed. She also testified that 10-year-old Shirley, one of Gertrude's kids, had ripped open Sylvia's shirt, and Richard Hobbs made a comment saying, "Everybody's having fun with Sylvia." And Gertrude testified in her own defense. She denied any responsibility and said her home was a quote-unquote madhouse. Yeah, you were charging kids to be there. It was a madhouse because
Yeah. You were running a circus.
you were running the circus.
Yeah. You were in charge.
And she was too preoccupied with her own bad health and depression to control her children.
Right.
Now I've got a sound clip from her.
I did never beat that girl. Never. She was beat up on by other girls. In fact, my own daughter socked her in the jaw and broke her wrist. And so, I mean, there you go. And girls around the neighborhood beat her up, bloodied her nose. One girl broke her nose, in fact, I think.
Were you ever in contact with the police on any of these occasions?
Well, in the last 2 weeks, in fact, I think if you talk to my daughters, I'd ask them that the children's father and I are divorced. And he's a policeman in Leech Grove, or was. And I've asked the girls repeatedly to call their dad and ask them what to do. And in fact, I asked Jenny, I said, Jenny, and I told Sylvia, I said, Sylvia, I'm going to have to call the police or somebody because I can't have this responsibility.
But the police were called only one time, and according to Hobb,
Well, I come in and she come up from the basement, and we noticed she was cold and everything, so we carried her upstairs, give her a warm bath and artificial respiration. When she stopped breathing, we gave her a warm bath, and then she stopped breathing. And so I gave her artificial respiration for about 10 minutes. And then I went and called the police.
by the time police found the girl, she had been dead some 8 to 12 hours.
How does she, when she's being interviewed about that, she didn't do anything, but she's malnourished too. Like, you didn't feed her.
Well, I think the way that Gertrude's talking is like she just randomly died from getting beat. Like, this beating wouldn't take 3.5 months of torture and malnourishment. It's just like, oh, she just happened to die. She was getting beat up every once in a while. She just happened to die.
Come on.
Come on. And Richard Hobbs says he was the one that gave mouth to mouth, but every other thing says Stephanie did it.
I believe Stephanie did it over him.
Yeah. And then they say that she was dead 8 to 12 hours before. So if they called the police right after this bathtub thing, she may have been dead when they brought her up to the bath. But everything I read said that she took her last breath in the bathtub. So I'm not sure exactly all of that. And at one point, Gertrude even claimed that she had tried to spank Sylvia and Jenny once, but emotionally unable to finish doing it.
Okay.
She didn't have it in her to spank them. Mm. And that was the only time that she ever hit her.
Okay.
Now, Marie, one of Gertrude's children, testified and was very emotional. She seems to be the only one that had like true remorse about the whole thing. She testified that although all 5 being tried had participated, her mother and her sister Paula were the ones who did the most harm. Marie stated that on one occasion, Gertrude sat in a chair and casually crocheted as she watched a neighborhood girl, Anna Cisco, attack Sylvia. She's just sitting in a rocking chair, crocheting, and Sylvia's getting beat to death over there. This is good entertainment. This is better than what's on the telly. Another girl, Grace Sargent, testified that she was sitting close to Paula on the church bus and heard her openly bragging about breaking her wrist when beating Sylvia. On May 16th, a court-appointed doctor was able to successfully say that Gertrude was sane and in full control of her actions. Even through some intense cross-examination, his opinion never wavered. And during the closing arguments, the prosecution really honed in on the abuse, bringing up all the terrible treatment that Sylvia faced and compared it to the abuse that was given to prisoners in Nazi concentration camps. Gertrude, and I hate defense attorneys, I'll say that 1,000 times. Gertrude's attorneys stated, I like this defense attorney because he's just doing his job. But Gertrude's attorney stated, this is in quotes, so I'm going to quote this. I condemn her for being a murderess. That's what I do. But I say she's not responsible because she's not all here. As he, tapped his head. Like, she's not all here. Okay? And if this woman is sane, put her in the electric chair. She's committed acts of degradation that you wouldn't commit on a dog. She has to be crazy or she wouldn't have permitted that. You'll have to live with your conscience the rest of your life if you send an insane woman to the electric chair. He's pretty much guilting the jury. Like, you're going to have to live with this the rest of your life if you send an insane woman to the electric chair. He then held up an autopsy photograph of Sylvia and stated, look at this exhibit. Look at the lips on that girl. How sadistic can a person get? The woman is stark mad. Someone get this guy an Academy Award.
Right. Well, she is. I mean, she has to be a little bit crazy.
Yeah, she is. She's got to be. The next defense attorney argued that 16-year-olds, 13-year-olds should not be put to death, which I do agree with that. Paula's attorney asked the jury to return a not guilty verdict for Paula as she had, quote unquote, gone through the indignity of being tried in an open court.
I don't care for Paula.
Give me a fucking break.
I don't care.
You made this girl strip down and masturbate with a Coke bottle, and you're wanting to talk about dignity.
Yeah, I don't care about her. I don't care if she gets the death penalty either. I don't care how old she is.
Richard Hobbs, the boy in the clip and the random neighborhood boy, his attorney argued that Richard was courageous for speaking out against Gertrude and that he acted under the control of Gertrude. And I'm sorry, he just doesn't seem remorseful. Like, he doesn't think what he did was a big deal.
No, listening to that interview clip, he doesn't seem like he needs to be out in society. Like, if you're that dumb to, be like, well, she told me to do it, dude. Like, shut up. You lived in your own house. You came over there on your own free will.
Yeah.
You beat her on your own free will. She wasn't holding, like, a knife to you.
Yeah.
No.
It just, yeah. And
lock him up, too. Because he seems like a menace to society if he just follows orders like that.
Yeah. And now, the craziest part of this defense attorney's closing argument, which, pissed me off. It made me be like, oh, yeah, this is why I hate defense lawyers. In the closing arguments, the defense attorney started putting blame on Jenny, saying that Jenny should have said something. Are you fucking kidding me? Let's not blame the people that need to be blamed. Let's blame the sister for being afraid for her own life and not saying something. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh, it made me so mad. In the rebuttal, a statement made that stuck out to me was, "All we hear is a whining appeal, anything but blame where the blame belongs." And I guess the different defenses argued back and forth about who inflicted the final blow that killed her. Like, we can't all be charged with we can't all be convicted with murder.
Right.
The only person that should be convicted for murder is who did that final blow, which I'm thinking might have been Coy. But anyway, the judge asked the jury to not consider any of that argument because every mark on that girl's body contributed directly to her death.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So convictions. On May 19th, 1966, the jury was sent to deliberate, and it only took them 8 hours. They found Gertrude guilty of first-degree murder. They found Paula guilty of second-degree murder. And John Jr., Richard Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard were found guilty of manslaughter. On May 25th, Gertrude and Paula were formally sentenced to life imprisonment, and the boys each received sentences of 2 to 21 years. What a range. 2 or 21.
Right.
So they were not sentenced to death. In September of 1970, the Indiana Supreme Court reversed the convictions of Gertrude and Paula due to the judge denying requests to have separate trials and a change of venue. They argued that it was impossible for them to have received a fair trial due to the publicity of the case. So those 2 girls were retried in 1971. Paula pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 2 to 20 years. You get to just plead guilty and you get a lesser sentence. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
If I killed somebody, I'm just going to say I did it and I'm going to plead guilty so I get a lesser sentence. I'll be out in 5 years. I'll see you then. I mean, are you kidding me?
Does it say what each of them actually end up getting?
Mm-hmm. Paula unsuccessfully tried to escape prison 2 times.
I love that.
But despite these attempts, she was released from prison in 1972. She was retried in 1971 and was released in 1972. She didn't even spend a year. Are you kidding me? Someone please send me a recommendation for something where you think the killer got a just sentence. Because I haven't found one yet. I have not found one yet. Anyway, Gertrude was convicted again for first-degree murder and was given another life sentence. During her time in prison, Gertrude was known as a quote-unquote model prisoner at the Indiana Women's Prison. She worked in the sewing shop and was known as den mother to younger female inmates. A lot of women would call her mom.
Ew.
Yeah. She was paroled in 1985.
So how long did she really spend?
About 20 years. For the most gruesome case in Indiana history, 20 years is all you get.
How old was she when she got out?
I don't know.
That's
Math
just
is
crazy
hard.
that she was able to get out and live a normal life again after doing that to somebody.
Yeah, I think she was like in her 60s.
Yeah.
She was paroled in 1985 and changed her name to Nadine Van Vossen. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know how this woman got out of prison. I don't know it. And if I go back on the Shanda Scherer case, her mom one time in an interview said, because Gertrude was known as a quote-unquote model prisoner and they get out for good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The mom said, I don't get it because you're supposed to be a good prisoner. Like, you shouldn't be rewarded for doing what you're supposed to do.
No.
Like, that's what prison is for.
Right. Oh.
When Gertrude was released, she moved to Iowa to live in obscurity. Mm-hmm. Karma bit her in the ass shortly after, and she died of lung cancer in 1980. So she only spent 5-ish years out. But still.
5 too long.
5 too long. Wish the lung cancer got her while she was still in prison. After her 1972 parole, Paula changed her name to Paula Pace and moved to Conrad, Iowa. There she concealed the truth about herself, and listen to this. She worked as a teacher's assistant in a school. Somehow got through the background check there. She was fired in 2012 when the school discovered her true identity. Paula had gotten married and had 2 kids. Now, if you remember, Paula was pregnant at the time of Sylvia's murder. So she did have that baby while she was awaiting trial, and that baby was put up for adoption. Like I said, Stephanie was never convicted of anything, but she did change her name and move to Florida and became a teacher. She wasn't convicted of anything, so I guess she can become a teacher and whatever, but she did move all the way to Florida. She did get married and had several children. Gertrude's children, Marie, Shirley, and James's last name were changed by their father to Blake, and the youngest baby, Dennis, was later adopted. And from what it looks like, Marie and Dennis have both passed away. Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard and John Jr. all served less than 2 years and were granted parole on February 17th, 1968. Richard Hobbs died of lung cancer on January 2nd, 1972 at the age of 21. Lung cancer at 21. That's wild. Coy Hubbard stayed in Indiana, never changed his name. I guess he was in trouble with the law a lot. On a separate occasion, he was charged with killing 2 young men in 1977. I won't go into detail on that one because I didn't look too much into it, but he did get acquitted. And there was a movie that came out about Sylvia's story back in 2007, and the movie was called An American Crime. And after that movie came out, I guess the people that employed Coy learned that Coy was like involved in this, and he got fired. I guess they didn't do a background check because he didn't change his name or anything.
Right.
And Coy suffered from a heart attack that same year in 2007, and it killed him. John Jr. changed his name to John Blake and became a quote-unquote lay minister. I don't really know what that is. When I looked it up, it still didn't seem super familiar. So if you know what that is, whatever. But he hosted counseling sessions for children of divorced parents. He later made a statement admitting that he and his co-defendant should have received harsher sentences.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we didn't get enough. We should all be behind bars. He died in 2005 with diabetes complications. Jenny later married a man named Leonard Wade. They had 2 children, and due to the trauma she had endured, she was heavily dependent on anxiety medication, and she died of a heart attack in 2004 in Beech Grove. She did stay in the Indianapolis area. I guess when Gertrude died, Jenny cut out the obituary in the paper and mailed it to her mother, saying, "Some good news. Damn old Gertrude died. Ha ha ha. I'm happy about that." She cut out the obituary in the paper and sent it to her mom in the mail. Jenny always was very open about the fact that she didn't want anyone to blame their parents for what happened to Sylvia. There's no way they could have known that this was going to happen or that it could even be a possibility. So, they were in the profession that they were in, and they had to do what they had to do to provide for their family. The house at 3850 East New York Street in Indianapolis, where the torture took place, stood vacant for several years. There were talks about it becoming a woman's shelter, but they were never able to get funding for that. So it did end up getting demolished and is now a church parking lot. And in 2001, a 6-foot-tall memorial was dedicated to Sylvia at Willard Park in Indianapolis. And that is Sylvia's story.
Dang, that was a wild ride.
Researching that one, just like it, I didn't think it was ever going to end.
And I do know those were completely different times. And Jenny said she don't want anyone to blame her parents. And I don't blame them. But even if you work 20 hours out of the 24 a day, or no one's that busy where you can't check in emotionally, I feel like, with your kids. Like, no one works 24 hours a day.
I know.
Where you have zero time to... I guarantee you they were out doing other stuff when they could have been checking on their kids.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they were.
You know what? You just don't leave kids for months at a time and see them twice.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it was a different time back then.
It was a different
And they
time.
were like she was 16, you know? I don't know.
I don't either. It just blows my mind.
A lot of people could have changed that situation.
Yeah.
A lot.
It really, humanity really failed her.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people knew about this and didn't say shit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine myself being put in that situation, knowing that this was going on and not saying something.
Mm-mm.
Maybe it's the times I grew up in, but I can't believe that there are that many kids that wouldn't say a freaking Baptist minister.
Or the kids that paid the nickel, they didn't like happen to tell their parents.
I know. I think it's another one of those cases of bad things can't happen to you. Mm-hmm. We all think that bad things can't happen to us. So when a bad thing is happening, our brain's wanting to think it's not actually happening.
Yeah. That one was rough, though.
That one was rough. And I'm glad to be done with it. I'm going to move on to something with like unicorns next time. Because that's the thing about this podcast is there's never going to be like usually happy endings at the end of these.
Sadly.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening and enduring that one with us. And don't forget to like, subscribe, head on over to YouTube, Spotify, however you like to listen to your podcast. We are here. We're here on video. We're here just for audio. However you like to do it, we are here. Let us know if you have a case that you really like us to cover. Let us know.
Yep.
If there's anything that you know that we can do to improve,
let us know.
Let us know. We're looking to do whatever we can to improve. So, yeah. Thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.